Today is Wednesday, October 3rd. It's a little after 6 p.m. for the Government Affairs Committee meeting. And we do not, I believe, have a quorum, but we have President Eric Previn here and Barry Johnson.
Here.
So that's two of us, the two best ones. So the rest of them are excused, but we will keep open the possibility that they're coming.
Do you know anything on Victoria?
No.
I'm surprised she's not here.
Yeah, she's usually...
The other two I can't say, but...
Correct. It may be a Vank-related thing.
No,
she's
that's,
that's tomorrow night. Right, but it's a lot of nights out, is my point. So, you know, because we got... there is Vank this week, so maybe she needed to take a break. But in any case, so the approval of the minutes from the last time, what I did, and I'm going to do this, my printer sort of... But I produced a description of what we did, who was present. Everybody was present minus Newman, and Patrick Lewis was excused. Gradium was a bit late, and so on. And we produced in that moment a CIS idea to take to the board, against unless amended, and we sent it timely, so that happened. And so the minutes are approved unless there's an objection.
No objection.
We'll move on. And then item number 4, we're going to take public comments on non-agenda items. So we do have a couple members of the public, so you can bring up whatever's on your mind that is underneath our jurisdiction. Just any kind of a public comment.
Do you have any comments?
It's better to hold my tongue, my mama said.
No, you should
No,
share. And I'll tell you one way to focus it, and then you don't have to think too hard about it. But is there anything that you would like government affairs to look into or address, you know, from the perspective of meddling with the way the rules are or something like that? Because we're happy to do it. We like to know what people think. So
Well,
if there are...
that would be covered under the homeless committee, wouldn't it?
Probably.
What do you mean? Your concerns are under the homeless
Well,
committee's
how the
jurisdiction?
government is dealing with the homeless situation.
Oh, okay. So you have some concerns about that. Fair enough. Well, if there's anything... We were talking earlier informally about the mobile pit stop program, and certainly government affairs can meddle in those case files because they do have a case file. I know that. You know, that's one of the things. I don't know, that may not be what you have in mind, but that's one of the
I'm kind of
kinds
more on the lines of, so with all these rallies and everything going on, and, you know, everyone's the kits for the homeless and whatever, but nobody is in the government is addressing the people that are on drugs and the people that are mentally ill. It's like, that's not a part of this, but that's a huge part of it, and I believe that most of our community and stakeholders, that's what they're concerned about. No one's saying if someone's down on their luck, don't help them, you know, or women and children and someone lost their job. Everybody supports that, but nobody supports the people that are breaking into our homes and our cars and that have drug problems and that are crazy. That's not being taken care of.
Right.
And I think more as time goes on, our community is going to get more and more upset about this. Start rallying. Don't you think?
Yeah.
There's programs for a lot of like mental health and drug things, but
They're
most
not
of it's
making
over
them.
it's not here, you know. It's over the hill in LA, South LA.
And they don't enforce it. They don't. The police. There's no rules to enforce these people being on the street. And saying you can't be here, you can go to mental health. You can't. There's nothing being done about these people on the street that are scaring people.
Right. Well, I can say that today, coming from the metro station, the Red Line, I noticed several people sleeping on the hillside of the Ventura there, opposite the Hollywood Bowl parking lot, near the Sun Cafe, right on the sidewalk. And then across at the Hollywood Bowl parking lot, you have...
There's
a little
been, like,
museum.
a little camp.
Yeah, a little camp. A little museum of strange things that are coming, I think, from the Goodwill container that's right next to it. So that's an interesting area because, you know, they shouldn't be going into the Goodwill container unless they need the stuff, but that should be distributed, you know, to where. But strewing it around is not a great area. But that's one thing that could be changed by a vibe change in that area. And I feel like, you know, that's possible. And I'll talk about it in another setting when I put it on the agenda. But I really do think that it's like one little foothold, and it's in a good spot because nobody lives there. People walk by there. So let's have it be decent. You know, because people are walking by there and going by there, and it will. I think it could be helpful, but we'll see. So, any other public comments? I mean, I didn't want to railroad your comment into my idea, but that's a good point. And
I'm just
you know,
saying
we're always
I
struggling.
think we're going to see a lot of feedback from the public
Yeah.
coming up, they're gonna fight back.
Yeah.
Homeowners and stakeholders are gonna start fighting this
Yeah.
because the government's doing nothing. They're doing nothing to
Right.
fight it. It's just getting worse and worse and worse.
One thing they're doing at the county is they should be expanding at both the city and the county is something called mental evaluation teams, METs, where they send out with a cop a mental health worker, psychologist, and it's effective because it
Okay,
helps
and
them.
how many
That's what we could
homeless
use.
do we have?
We have too many. That's the problem. The
And
numbers
how
are
many
bad.
do they see a
Right.
day? Two?
Right. We need more.
You know?
But it's a good idea to merge.
Well,
the two
I think
because
they
it-
see a lot, but
Yeah.
the trouble is it's all on the other side of the hill. We're not
Okay.
getting any of that.
There you go. So
Yeah.
that's a good subject for next time.
So this may not be government affairs, but what I think is needed within the neighborhood council is that the homeless committee needs to be attended by the public safety committee and vice versa. There should be a member, because I just see them each going in their own direction a little too far.
I think Monday night there was somebody there from the Public Safety Committee, a face I recognized, but I'm not sure. Thanks.
Sure.
I just think it would be good to cross-pollinate the two a
Yeah.
little bit more.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, we can play a role there. I mean, I do not want to. I don't think anyone wants to have, a board that is kind of split on party lines. They, in some way. And when I say party, I don't mean the homeless party and the public safety party. I think there's room for everyone. But it is an interesting question. How do you avoid having two very different camps and try to have one?
Pretty one-sided right now.
Some of what the police can do now too is tempered by federal court rulings, like that have tied their hands, which hasn't helped. Because the federal courts have said, you can't ban them from the streets or sidewalks
Unless you have a
if you
gun for
don't, unless you have a home for them, essentially.
Right.
Well, rules have to change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a very interesting subject. Let's, any other public comments? And I will think of a way to agendize your concern, in a way that maybe can bring it forward. And, feel free to flesh it out, because I would love to be helpful. And I love talking about it and thinking about it. But, we are facing it. So it's not that much, it's not just theoretical. And sometimes it feels that way when you're a little up on the hill. So, but, I walk around through the area and I'm very interested in trying to help and merge together our community to do a better job.
And even in public comment at the board meeting, if like you were to say, bring up the point of those two committees getting a little more interaction between, I'm not
Yeah.
saying they have to meet together, but at least get a sampling of each committee at the other committee's meeting, because you're right, it's not
Well, the board's
happening
supposed
now.
to be neutral. I don't care what committee you're in. You're supposed to listen to everybody.
Right.
Not just decide that this is.
Okay, well, that is a good jumping in point to the item on the agenda, which is items of interest under the Board of Supervisors and City of LA Budget Finance Committee. And these were two that I saw on the agenda that I put down, A and B. We'll talk about them each separately briefly. But you gave a good segue, because one of the questions is, this is, and I brought a copy of the ordinance, so we can actually learn a little bit about it, but I know a teeny bit about it. The first one is support from the Board of Supervisors. Now, the Board of Supervisors are 5 elected officials who, roll the county, which has now this year a $32 billion budget instead of a $24 billion budget, which when I started looking, it's getting bigger and more powerful. And they are trying to they're the net, and they're grappling, and so they step forward and they write a motion that says, support Proposition 10, repealing the Costa Hawkins Rental Housing Act ballot initiative. And it's a recommendation as submitted by the Supervisor Kuehl and Solis, two progressive icons, so says the Los Angeles Times. And it's a great idea. It's to repeal the Rental Housing Act that'll give local governments throughout the state the ability to create reasonable protections, they say, for renters in the jurisdictions. And then they publish a little some reasons why. Now, I was interested by that for a couple different reasons. One is, I was always under the impression that if you're an elected official, you're supposed to not put your thumb on the scale and kind of remain a little bit neutral. But I realized that that's not true. They do lobby for stuff. They, for example, will they'll direct sometimes their legislative people to push for something like SB 10, as an example. But I don't know. I mean, people. There's two very good arguments, and they're spending a lot of money. For the record, you know what this is about? Costa Hawkins.
Right.
It's about making it so that rent control is going to be
Cover single-family homes.
right,
Right.
and some other things that they're going to throw out the rule that said that only things subsequent to 1978 they were not
in LA.
right in Los Angeles. So
So it would, because I've always thought that the 1978 thing was unfair. It's like either have total rent control or none at all, but making it on buildings that were built before 78 just doesn't seem fair.
no,
And this would get rid of that and say all buildings are.
well, there's different proposals, but the first step is to get rid of the Costa Hawkins rule, and then there's something called vacancy decontrol, which means that when a person moves out, okay, if you're making $2,100, if you're paying $2,100 in a rent controlled, X number, and when somebody moves out, the landlord can jack up the rent to market rate if they want. So some people think that that's the compromise, that they should be allowed to do that make all the new units rent controlled, but when somebody moves out of a rent controlled unit, they can take it to market rate. That's what.
And Prop 10 wouldn't allow them to go to
Well,
market
they need
rate.
Prop 10, and by the way, they claim that Prop 10 is a retaliation for the people. S was hammered down by
What's S?
the S initiative a year ago. Remember Measure S, and then AIDS Healthcare Foundation. The guy Michael Weinstein spent all this money and tried to get a rewrite of the development code. You probably remember, it was a year ago. It was on the ballot, and so that failed. And so those same people came back and said, well, then we're going to repeal Costa Hawkins, which is sort of like a little bit of an attack on developers because, the argument always goes the same. Like, this is hard to make a living as a developer around here. If we can't charge market rate rent, you guys are crazy, is what the developers say. And you'll see a $60 million ad campaign being rolled out right now to make you believe that it's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And this is the other side of that, where the supervisors and the mayor, although the mayor is not as into it because he's not, for some reason he's not being the spokes guy on it. But the supervisors are helping, and I saw a ton of organizations piling on, AIDS Healthcare Foundation, the ACLU, which surprised me because, again, aren't you supposed to stay out of advocating for laws? I mean, they're picking the Supreme. I just thought that they were supposed to be neutral, and I sort of feel like the government is supposed to be neutral. Like, I don't like it when they do politics in the government. It's like, but you could say, well, I don't know. I mean, do people have any thoughts about that? I mean, have you
They're
noticed?
taking a lead from our national government, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a reaction. Today, I mean, on Tuesday's board meeting, Supervisor Solis brought the 30th motion that the County Board of Supervisors have brought sort of about immigration and against the federal government, which for their constituents, which is, remember, 50-something% of Angelenos are of a certain, so you can understand it, but it raises some interesting questions, I think, because one, they're being sued for it on their homeless initiative. They were pushing too hard. Here comes Victoria, I think. So, you can get in trouble for crossing the line with public dollars going in the pursuit of politics.
Give me your pen and I'll fill one out just so you have this.
Okay, good. There she is.
There she is. Hey.
Finally.
So we have a
start.
quorum now.
Yes. How are you?
Okay.
Good. So sorry you had to walk in.
That's okay. It was a nice brisk walk. At least it wasn't.
Right. It's
Yeah.
nice that it's cooling off. We're getting some cool nights.
Yes.
So, Victoria Shulam, present and accounted for. We were just talking about, we did a little public comments where we talked about the Crips and the Bloods the homeless and the public safety teams and working together. But now we're talking about the item on the agenda, which is called the Board of Supervisors talking about their support for Proposition 10, which we're probably seeing a lot of it's on the airwaves now. This is the one to repeal Costa Hawkins, which would make it so that local governments can be more involved in rent control. And the developing community is against it, and the Sheila Kuehl and Hilda Solis and ACLU and a bunch of the people who fought for S, if you remember the S initiative, that's AIDS Healthcare Foundation guy, supported all this, planning stuff to control expansion was basically the idea. And it was defeated at the ballot box. But this one is, and we were just discussing, is kind of, it's political, but it's about finding a solution. And I'm wondering, should we be putting, these kinds of things on the agenda? I guess we do. Maybe that's fine.
So if it passed, how would they set what rents are? Would every single renter rental property be, they'd go back and say, this is what your rent can be?
No, the way, and again, I'm not an expert and I'm learning about it myself, but I'll do my best. New units will be subject to rent control. Under this, if the Costa Hawkins Act is passed, is repealed, and it will go to local control and local jurisdictions like the city of LA. So that's a big red flag there. Do we want them in charge? But they will get to decide that, for example, and this is what they're talking about, new units will be rent controlled. There can be some rent control so that when you get into a unit, it can only go up 3% a year or some fixed percent.
But it would be a local decision.
I think it would be
as
new
opposed to
units.
So it would start at
supplemental
market rate. It's
decision.
then just a question of how much it can go up each year.
Right, but her point, we don't know
What they would
exactly,
do.
but she's right, local. It would be,
It
the whole point is
local,
that
rather
by
than
repealing the
Sacramento
state law,
telling us
right.
how to run our
That's
But
business.
isn't that how it is now with new units that is?
No, now
But
there's
it's
no rent control.
1978 or earlier. It is. But if it's newer than 78, it's not.
Now, I have a question. I did hear something, I believe it was about this on McIntyre, and the person who was talking to, they were talking about that it may have been the Costa thing. It could be construed to apply to your rental homes,
Right.
your granny flat, the room in my house.
Granny flats can't be rented for money. If you have a granny flat, it's whoever's in there can't be paying you anything legally.
Oh, and
Okay, we'll
they
forget
don't.
about that.
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
But if you're renting out, if
Right.
you have rental homes, but your a room in your house, whatever, that it could apply to all of those. Was I hearing that's about Costa or possibly the city?
It would apply to a rental house. Chances
I think
are,
that's different. I think what you're talking about, if you can
I
just,
heard today that if you wanted to rent your house out, or I have rental houses, it would cross the board. It would affect all of us.
Right.
They would tell us.
They would start
They
stepping
would-
right in our house.
that's what they're saying in the ads.
Is that
Right.
under the Costa Hawkins?
that's right. So let's agree that we're learning about this now, because
Yes, okay.
I did take a few notes which I pulled up. Maybe that will be helpful to me, because I was talking to someone who I thought was knowledgeable about it. But so what this guy is for, he's kind of like a little in the middle. He's kind of interested in a partial repeal. And he was saying that rent control should apply to new buildings, that it should apply in LA, because up until October 1978 was the last time that it did, right?
Right.
So after that, doesn't apply. In other words, most places are not
Anything
subject.
you own that's 79 or newer is not under rent control.
Right.
But it's just unfair,
You
I think.
don't have to. You're not subject to that now as an owner. So you like it,
79 or newer.
right?
Well, single-family homes aren't subject to.
Right. And the other thing
To
they
it
want to do
anyway
is
now.
Yeah.
right. So what Yeah, and so he thinks that the rent control should also apply to condos, or they're trying to propose, and single-family homes and apartments, so that the proposal would be to have those things also included, which makes sense, right? I mean, if you're going to have it, it shouldn't just be for one and not the other. But the
'Cause
balance
they're thinking
is
a rental is
Yeah.
a rental is a rental.
yeah, and they would have increases annually. You know, there would be annual increases, but it would be controlled. Now, currently the landlords can simply jack it up as much as they want. You know, now a landlord, when somebody moves out or whenever, they can just send something on, in some places, on your door, unless you're in a rent-controlled property. That means before, and say, like my friend who was paying $1,300 and lives with another person and his wife and a child in a unit. They were paying $1,200, and then they said now it's $1,600. But if you want to pay, if you won't sign a lease for 12 months, make that $1,650 for month to month. And they were like, where are we going to come up with that? Because they're poor. And so that is possible now. It wouldn't be possible in a model where there was a control. But now what we're seeing, interestingly enough, someone said, is that some landlords, knowing that might happen, are jacking it up now.
Of course they are.
So that's a standard thing that happens. And then I was mentioning vacancy decontrol, which is when a place is vacated, you could raise to market rate. And now this guy thinks that that's a compromise, that it should be that it's okay to make new stuff rent controlled, but if someone moves out,
Isn't that how it normally works?
well, I was not clear about that.
think
I
that's how
thought
it works in New York.
No, but in New York, as I recall, and my mother used to be a landowner disclosure and had fights with tenants who were crazy tenants who would stay and cheat and have somebody pretend, they would do anything they could to retain the great deal, and she would do anything she could to get them out, so she could charge a reasonable amount, or whatever. So that's a dynamic that we're trying to avoid, I assume. But another impact that this guy talked about was that you're going to see big people who are developing. They won't develop rental units. They'll turn them into condos, and they'll just, he's worried that mom and pop folks.
A lot of condos, though, in our area end up being rentals anyway.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He said politicians are greedy, which is it.
Really?
But so are the developers, and so are everybody, including the mom and pops. He is among the mom and pops, and they're doing just fine by pursuing the mom and pop. Everybody
It's
wants
America's
to do
cancer, greed.
Right. And so I don't know, I think we're going to learn more about this, and I think we should talk to people and find out what we think, because, we're being assaulted now from both sides in the advertising. So it's interesting to see. I mean, you can side up with your supervisors or with your AC. I mean, again, I just have to raise, the reason why I put this on here was I'm very interested, and we'll learn about it, like I said. But I was really surprised that, there's so much politics in government. So, what can I say? The ACLU, I took a picture. I'm like, wait, why are they supporting something? Aren't they supposed to stay out of measures and supporting candidates, or no? I mean, they're
have no
attacking the
boundaries.
president, which, I understand why they want to do that, but aren't they supposed to? I remember, no, we can't support or attack. Can't. So they're just, everybody's jumped the shark. Let's move on to item
Can
B.
I
Yes. Oh,
talk?
yeah. Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so there's a few things I don't understand. So let's say, there's someone's lived in one of these little places for the last 10 years, and they've been under rent control, right? And they're still paying the $800, and they die, whatever, they're gone. So does that rent adjust to market value, or is it so it goes to market value? Okay.
Well, the landlord has that right,
Okay.
and
I don't know
they
about
always
that.
do
I never
raise
had
it.
that.
I'm guessing.
But I think for the for the people that own single-family homes that aren't under rent control right now, if they slap a rent control on there that doesn't match the cost of living, obviously every year insurance goes up, taxes go up, gardeners go up, all of that stuff goes up every
The
single year.
DWP triples.
Yeah, oh my God, usually, I don't have that, but all
Right.
the other expenses, plus keeping up a house. If they slap a rent control on single-family homes like that to where the cost of living doesn't match that rent, then a lot of people are gonna be selling their homes, and then there's gonna be even a bigger shortage, you
Yeah.
know?
I have a great
Creates an
idea.
adversarial relationship between a tenant and a landlord where there may not need to be one, wouldn't it? Because if you have like in my situation, I rented a house, just recently ended that rental, 14 years, never got a rent raise, because they were happy who was living there. And they were taking care of it, so that's a relationship that worked.
Mhm.
But if you have rent control, I mean,
You're less likely to take care of the property,
Yeah.
too,
Right.
to dump
Oh,
money into it, I would think.
absolutely. No, my brother, his wife had an apartment in Santa Monica for many years. They replaced all the floors, they replaced the entire kitchen, they replaced bathrooms because the landlord wouldn't do it.
So
Interesting.
anyways, there's
What's
a
wrong with
lot.
all this
Yeah.
regulation is that it sounds all great in theory, but how do you control what the people that you're regulating are gonna react? They're a lot smarter fiscally than the government, and they're gonna figure out ways to make their money grow that they never even thought about in this law.
Right. I think it's a mix between capitalism and community, and that's the thing. But we've been neglectful around here at looking out for everybody. I think that's part of the homeless problem. So I think people are grappling for it. There's something, and I whether or not it's a good thing is what we're trying to unlayer. Because there's an organization that's very vocal and effective. I noticed them at a county board meeting that came out like in force from around Long Beach, where there's a lot of rentals and apartments and rich and poor, all kind of in Long Beach, and they were vigorously against rent control. Like, this is what's making it worse, So they had a whole presentation. I mean, maybe because this is unfolding now, maybe we should schedule some people from different sides of the debate to give us their spiel. I mean, I'd like to hear, from someone the truth. Well, there's no truth.
There are two truths.
There's several truths, but like these people, I'm sure are trying to get the word out. We're in neighborhood government affairs. We could invite people to come back and and say, hey, we want to. I mean, maybe that's what this
Can
is
we do it
intended to
before
do.
the election? Do we have time?
Well, is the election like around the corner? Yeah, we're in October.
It's before what our next meeting would be.
Yeah, we could have a special meeting if we're so inclined. I mean, or maybe we could ask someone to come to one from either side to the board meeting. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Let's do that. That'll be our motion, and we'll invite
How do you
somebody.
find somebody?
Well, I know the organization. I can look it up. If you Google "We Hate Rent Control," they pop right up, and then you can Google. I mean, there's a million people who are in support of
Or
it.
just Google yes on 10 and no on 10.
Yeah, and we'll just ask people to come to our meeting. That's a great idea because people will want to know, and Sussman can attack them, and then Isbicki can make a speech. It'll be
At least we
great.
get more information.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Can we
Okay.
have balloons?
Yes, we can have balloons as well.
I might
All right.
cancel my trip to Montana to see this.
I know this is going to be world class.
But-
By the way, Ted
But you know
Turner's
who
in
I
trouble.
blame more than the developers is all the past and present council members and
Exactly.
mayors of this city going back
no.
for 50 years because they have done nothing but green light
Exactly.
every project that comes before them essentially, and it's always tearing down
Right.
affordable units
Right.
and putting in
Giant-
units that are twice as expensive, and we wonder why we have no affordable units. Well, they've been doing this for 50 years.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
They did it for the Dodgers. They tore out Chavez Ravine.
Same thing, yeah.
The main streets are all corridors of high rises now.
Right.
Anyways.
Moving right along. We can
So,
continue
I just
after.
wanna
Yes.
say
Oh, absolutely.
that-
Victoria, please.
I am opposed to rent control. Period. As a former business owner, as a business owner, if some government group had come along and said, you can only charge this for your product, after everything we had put into it, I would have said screw it and shot my product in the head. I would have rather killed it than live like that.
Do you see a relationship between the
If I-
escalating rent and the people winding up outside?
No.
No.
No. Some of it, yeah, but no. We have a lot of very poor people in the city. This is not a city for poor people. And we've been shunting lower income people to the hinterlands for many years, but now the hinterlands that low income people can live in are way out there. They're nowhere near the city and they want to live in the city. And I don't know, how do you make affordable housing in a city where it is so expensive to build? I don't know how you're going to do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right. And the wages have not risen in Los Angeles as they have in some other places where you've seen, you know, you have escalating costs of living everywhere, you know. But
Yeah.
some places the wages rise with the cost of living, some
Depends
places
on
they
whose
don't.
wages you're talking about. There's
Yeah.
these wages and there's these wages. It's two different things.
Personally, I think the biggest
Right.
problem with the homeless is you have to sort them and pull off the ones that are working homeless who have a chance and get them housed and going. And my preference is we take over motels, we eminent domain and take over motels that have been housing hookers and drug dealers and start with homeless working women and put them in there and get
Where do we put the hookers and the drug dealers?
We send them to Hancock Park.
Good idea. That's an
Yeah.
excellent idea.
Um,
Seconded.
and then do something. Many years ago, I was going down the 5, and there was the Queen, and it was empty. And I thought, oh my God. At that time, we only had homeless veterans, and I thought,
Queen
what
of Angels, is that what you're, I was
Mhm.
born there.
really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I was born at Good Sam.
Yeah, okay.
We could wait. And I thought, oh my God, it's empty. That would be an answer for our homeless veterans because rooms with bathrooms,
Mhm.
a central kitchen,
Mhm.
meeting rooms, conference rooms, teaching rooms.
Where is this? On
Queen of Angels
Queen.
is right off the Hollywood Freeway.
Near-
It's now the
Religious
The religious-
thing.
Scientology?
Scientology.
No, it's not
It's
Scientology.
Scientology.
It's one of those.
Okay.
But the same thing holds. A
Huge
hospital
hospital.
is already
It would have been
built.
perfect, yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and if they had something, a nice hospital.
Like
all I'm
Riverside
saying.
Drive Hospital would have been perfect until they
Yeah.
tore it down and built
Yeah.
condos.
They
That
could,
would've been
in a
perfect right
hospital
there
like
in that
that,
location.
Yeah.
where you have various banks of elevators, you could literally separate homeless drug addicts from homeless people with mental issues.
Mm.
And you could separate them into different side
Mhm.
elevator systems so that there would be rooms for services. It could all be done in one big building,
Problem is, you
Mm.
can't make them go.
but you can't make them go.
Mm. Well, that's why I'm proposing a booze cruise, where we load them onto a boat. No, I mean, we wrote about this, my brother and I. That
The one-way ticket?
no. I mean, you have to keep your eye on the. But you know, those are decommissioned cruise ships. Also have little bathrooms in every room, a little bit of privacy, and you can have the mental health teams in the poop deck, you know, down on the dining room in the casino.
It's the same
For,
thing.
it's the same
with
idea, and
plumbing,
then
it's
you
great.
know, but what you can't do is send that offshore and then you know
We couldn't send
sink
it.
it. That's not acceptable, nor something that everybody always wants to go there. I don't want to go there, so
No.
I'm
But we
defending
could
myself in
send it to
advance.
San Francisco.
Yeah, no, but people have actually looked at this because it's a
think
smart
so.
idea.
Just
I
keeping
know.
Yeah.
it docked.
And I even got the very appealing guy from mental health, who's the very appealing veteran mental health guy, military guy, mental health guy, who thinks it's a good idea. You know, he was trying to think about how. But let's go back on the agenda, even though because we can talk as much as we want. No, because you want to hear this last bit very quickly. Item B, which is the same bit, and I was present where at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, Mitch O'Farrell, one of the council members, took a seat and read into his motion, and it was on October 1st, which I think is worth noting, was the day that they had that terrible.
Las Vegas.
Yeah. So there was a lot of coverage of that. And so I understood then what I was doing. He was trying to do something on that day. So that's what he did. And he came up with an idea, which is to have the Bureau of Contract Administration at City of LA make everybody who wants to have a contract with the city sign an affidavit that they have nothing to do with the NRA.
Absolutely not acceptable.
I'm not a member of the NRA and don't intend to be, but You know, that's somebody's right, actual constitutional right, and I don't even think constitutionally that the city could get away with that.
I agree.
So this was O'Farrell came up?
Yeah, O'Farrell,
I mean,
seconded
it
by our
seems to
hero,
be very
Mr. Kukori.
extreme.
So you're not
You
gonna-
know,
what the
I don't
motion should
agree
be
necessarily with
recall.
the NRA, but I believe they have the right to have their organization.
It's like saying if you're Catholic, you need to disclose that.
Right,
If you
right.
wanna- If you want to do a contract, you know what I mean? Or if
It's
you're
very
Jewish
strange.
or whatever. No,
It's
like-
basically like poking around in people's affiliations. I mean, it's like, Mr. Previn,
To
are
what
you
point?
with the YMCA,
To
sir?
what point?
Now, it was different when the city, I think, didn't want to hold any kind of meetings in Arizona because of Arizona's immigration
I
thing.
thought that was
with
the same category.
The sheriff.
Yeah, Arpaio,
the
he's
same
awful.
thing.
But
Yeah.
but banning a state, because what if you happen to be a dignified person in a state who's not about that, and you're shut out of bit? You know, I found that similar. It's the same category, so we're on the same page. You know, you could say it's manageable. They kept making exceptions, was my recollection, for the Arizona thing. It was like Taser, which is now Axon.
They let the DWP build a resort there.
Did they? Yeah.
Oh, very expensive resort.
Interesting. Well, so, you know, I think we're all gravitating to the same thing, which this is a little bit outrageous to go through this kind of a process. You know, what was the other one? There was there was disclosing similar by affidavit if you or your construction company or your company has had any work related to the wall proposed by the President Trump.
political.
Well, that to me is
So
political, right? So then
It's
you
party.
again, you start to see like the line of we know it when we see it, what's obscene or what's inappropriate. But when you look at the other one, SB 10, the proposition, we all kind of agree, well, they are allowed to advocate for laws that they want, aren't they? And so maybe it's the devil's in the details on all this. I mean, I don't, you know, maybe the way the supervisors actually worded it was at the very end they said, therefore, we, the board, take an official position. There's nothing wrong with them taking a position, which would give local governments throughout the state the ability to create reasonable protections for renters in their jurisdictions. Fine, but maybe the problem is that you can take a position on pending legislation, but this is on the ballot, and that's different. When something is being voted on, it's like you're supposed to not tell people what to do. Right? Aren't you allowed to? I mean, because there's two sides. If I was an anti-10 guy, I would be furious about this, I think.
Well, they're campaigning. Isn't
Would
it?
I be? I mean, or
Yeah,
no?
they're
Would you not be?
campaigning.
What are you doing, Sheila Kuehl? Why are you telling people what to do? We're not. We're just saying we support it. Yeah, but you put it on the agenda, you make a big deal. And by the way, their big deal was they quickly continued it.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. So that's even worse, because then it's like free advertising, and they don't have to. It's like, because you know these things get printed up. I mean, the agendas for these big agencies, the county is huge. You know, they get smeared all over the place. People read them.
That was campaigning.
Yeah. What was? Yeah.
So they
That's what they were
accomplished what they
doing,
wanted
was
to do.
campaigning.
They were
And
campaigning.
using their office to do it.
Right, but you-
I don't
and-
think that passes the smell test.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. So if we go around the room, everybody seems to agree that both of these are a little fishy. I mean, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but in the tippy toeing up to using the public office for political advantage or political gain, that's my feeling too. So I thought
Do
we
you
had.
want to do a motion
Yeah.
for
Well,
B?
do you want to? Do you think we could?
I think
mean,
we
could. Say,
could.
yeah, okay, let's do it. How would it go? The
The board of the Studio
yeah.
City Neighborhood Council does not support, or no, opposes. That's more. Opposes council file. So this can be a CIS.
Yeah.
Council file 180896.
Mhm.
18-0896.
Right. Mind your own business.
That states, can't you just put the states and then read this?
Um,
Opposing it?
Yeah, we can really leave it like negative, just and not say anything
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
I mean, we don't, we can say
We
whatever we,
can
want.
just say
yeah.
that.
Or we could say something like what I proposed, which was a bit of a joke, but mind your own business is one thing. But
Well,
we could say,
Well,
creating ridiculous criteria is going to disincentivize good businesses from competing for work in LA.
Or something
like that,
maybe
I
that
think they
Sober,
don't like
more
free
sober.
speech.
this is on principle. It's
Yeah.
not support for or against the NRA. It's just the fact that they're trying to
Yeah.
do that to an organization that's completely legal. I mean, it's not like a neo-Nazi group,
No.
you know?
Right.
They're trying to hurt them.
Right.
It's
I mean-
total bias. Yeah.
And also,
Yeah.
Nothing
they
to
are.
do with contractors.
Right.
Yeah.
But whether a contractor does something, is an NRA member or does something to help them, shouldn't have anything to do with if the city
One of the examples-
uses them as a contractor.
Right. One of the examples that I heard, and it made me wonder, is something else going on here, was I think, and the detail might be wrong, but Federal Express, gives a discount to the NRA or something. So somebody got upset about that. So
They're
I don't think that
business.
they should, as Federal Express, have to say, yeah, we give a discount to the NRA. We also give a discount to the nurses and to
They
the
give a
et cetera. But
discount to all
a bunch-
big organizations.
not all, but if the NRA's on the list, O'Farrell, they would have to disclose.
But doesn't it, like any big corporation, which the NRA essentially is, get a discount? I'm pretty sure
I don't know.
from FedEx.
Why don't you
I
just
get
turn,
one for
just
my
turn it
business.
around?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
just
easy
turn the
to
question
obtain,
around,
and there's
and
probably
instead of
different
NRA,
levels
Oh,
of
sure.
discounts.
Say
but-
League of
Depending on
Women
your
Voters.
volume.
yeah,
Yeah, you think Amazon
How will
doesn't give a
everybody
discount?
feel
Oh,
about
yeah,
that?
yeah.
That if you
Yeah, that's
it's
an
probably the
interesting idea.
biggest.
and
Yeah.
insert your
Do you hear Peter's idea? Peter says, what if we, reverse it, so to speak, or, how would people feel if they had to disclose if they ever had, contact with the League of Women Voters was an example, or,
That'd be a good one.
you
Bring
know,
that one up.
and, but, what it does
insert
is,
your favorite organization.
yeah, insert your favorite organization here. I mean, I think that, it's beyond the pay. It's just not appropriate. I don't like any of those things where you're telling people, that they have to comply with something like that feels
write your
constitutional.
motion.
Yeah, the board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council opposes council file, etc. And then we just need a sentence if we want one. Something like, I thought you were in a good area, which was, not with, without weighing in on the legitimacy of the National Rifle Association, something like that, right? I mean, or do we want to? I mean, I don't know. Is he trying to say his motion is a little insane? He says that he cites a bunch of research about shooting, which is not wrong, and that NRA spends money aggressively, defending their stuff, and for the sake of transparency, residents and stakeholders deserve to know how the city's funds are spent. Well, isn't that interesting? We
No, we don't.
got a very interesting
I just think
reader.
the NRA has a complete right to do what it does without being penalized by the city of Los Angeles. They're doing nothing illegal to, make this to make them be penalized by the
Right.
city.
I think
Trying
that-
somebody without due process, sort of.
How about it's obviously unconstitutional or does not pass
There you
legal
go.
muster or something like that.
Unconstitutional.
This obviously, I don't know if it's
It's
unconstitutional.
restricting free speech.
Yeah, it's a violation of
It's
people's.
intimidating to
right.
restrict free speech.
Is there good language? Because that's
Yeah.
we're in the right area, right? Something about how it's rights inhibiting, or it's unfair.
And
Well, and you could say it's, impeding the rights of two constitutional amendments, the fourth and the first. Free speech and the, right to bear arms.
Yeah.
So you could put that the SCNC is against an ordinance proposed directing any, and then just follow this up due to
What
the
if we
right,
struck
the
out-
First and Fifth Amendment or whatever.
what if we struck out National Rifle Association and put in La Raza? Is this recorded?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We can't undo anything, but I think that I'm happy with something that says, that this does not pass the smell test, so to speak. This is this is an overreach. It's kind of an overreach.
Okay,
It's
so
like,
let me.
what do you got, a language? Yeah.
So, but I was looking up who
He's actually pandering for votes is what he's doing.
is NRA may support, or companies that support the NRA are like Hertz Rental or whatever, other companies. So if you do this, does the city have any contracts with any of these other groups?
Right,
You
that
know,
would
it becomes
unravel
a
it.
tangled web of
Right.
what you're gonna have to boycott here. You can't just
Right.
2 to 1.
Yeah, how do you pick just one,
I have an idea, maybe, because I think, I don't want to, even though I'm furious about this, I don't want to invalidate his message, So I think it's appropriate to say where we're concerned, we're also concerned about gun violence. This does not seem like a good step at all.
I personally feel it would be a much better step if they were talking about creating and building institutions for mentally ill people, which apparently is all Ronald Reagan's fault, among other things.
Right.
But no one who bitches about that has raised a finger to reinstitute them.
Well, that's a deeper point, but I agree. But do you think it's worth saying a sentence about, we share, certainly Studio City shares the council members' concern about gun violence in America, but,
that's not why he's doing it though.
No.
I know, but I don't want to. I want to make it clear that we are also,
Yeah.
we're not inhumane asshole. Because if you write something like no,
But you
it could be
can't-
like,
But you can't
they
point
think we're
fingers
sitting here.
at one organization.
No, that's what I think. But to isolate one of
Right.
many organizations that are,
get it.
I mean, and they're also cops and military
Yeah.
and people who are, it's like to invalidate the NRA completely is just like insane. You have to deal with them. They're a formidable force. But this makes you look like an idiot
Yeah,
to me.
everyone's concerned
Yeah.
to gun violence. However, this
Yeah.
is out of the such as, right?
To single out the
To
NRA
single
is completely unfair.
Right. That's good.
To single
Well, he's
out.
pandering to the left. He wants votes.
One
Single out
organization.
an organization,
Yeah, one organization makes no sense
and it's
and is,
unconstitutional, right?
yeah, I mean, it's certainly
You
unfair.
would think,
And is
Appears to be
and,
unconstitutional.
and may be unconstitutional. Good. Okay, so I'll read that back and we'll see if we like it. I mean, I can tweak it a little bit. Whereas Studio City stakeholders share your concern about gun violence, to single out one organization makes no sense and may be unconstitutional.
But you got to put the National Rifle Association in that
Okay.
motion so that when the motion shows, they know what you're talking about.
to single out the National
Oh,
Rifle
okay, good.
Association.
Does the city use FedEx?
Probably.
I'm sure they do.
They offer discounts to NRA members.
I know.
Do you see how tangled this is?
Do you not have to put in that motion though?
That's why I
what
thought
it's
he-
about for a motion or for
Related to the case file, which is described as
requesting that any company doing
Yeah.
business with
disclosure.
right. Yeah,
Right.
I would add some of that because
Okay.
somebody might only see just your motion and not have the conversation behind it. Do you know what I'm
Yep.
saying?
And see, he's actually not saying, he's saying directing a prospective contractor to disclose any contractor sponsorships, but he doesn't say if they do, what happens to them.
I'll tell you what happens to them. Off
They
with
don't
your
get
head.
the
You don't get the
job.
contract, right?
But he doesn't say
I know,
that.
of course not.
It's
But it's
implied.
funny, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a threat.
But
Yeah.
I take your point, which is let's find 3 sentences. So
Right.
it's the ban, or not the ban because he didn't say that, right?
So-
The disclosure requirement contracts or sponsorships with the NRA.
Mm-hmm.
Disclose
The disclosure.
any prospective contractor with the city of LA to disclose.
No, I think you can just call it the disclosure
Disclosure
requirement.
requirement.
Yeah, the disclosure requirement
With the National Rifle Association.
of any contracts
And he should
or
have the other
sponsorships with the National Riflery Association, NRA. Okay?
Yep.
Yep. It should be on this committee.
All right, fine. So we can do that motion for the board. We'll send that to the board, and I will try. I mean, I think it's a good idea to try to get a speaker from each side for 2 minutes.
It's a great idea.
You know,
For
because
Prop 10?
yeah, because then
Yeah.
they'll know, and maybe if they were smart, they would send a good speaker.
More than 2 minutes.
What do you think? Because Patrick's always got a, what do you
Start
think?
with 10.
5
go
minutes.
down to 5.
Yeah.
Because people are going to want to ask questions. We're going to need to get room for various board members to jump up and pontificate, and others to
Exactly.
sing. Hopefully,
But
someone will
with
sing.
your committee also, I think it'd be really important to
Yeah.
look at the ballot and other things that are coming up, because it's so confusing what people vote for, and that's why our city is in such a mess, because we all voted for stuff that we didn't understand.
That is
We're
a-
told one thing, and it's,
Yeah.
if we could really get some facts out to people about what we're really voting on, like if it's something to do with the police department and we spell it out, like if we do this, this is gonna
Right.
happen, or it's gonna take these rights away from them if you
Right.
vote this. Nobody knows. I'll
Can I-
be the
can I
first
tell
to
you?
admit.
No, I know.
We listen to John and Ken or whatever and say, what do they say to vote for, Because it's really hard to figure it all out.
I read it
Well,
I
some
read
people
it.
listen
Well, I know, but
to.
even reading it
I read it
doesn't
too.
make sense in a lot
twice.
of
If I don't
cases.
get it after 2 readings, well, first I look at who's for it,
But
who's
you're really
against it.
smart and you've been in politics for a long time.
That's
Most
true.
people aren't.
Sometimes I have to read them out loud.
Yeah, one thing that I've done in the past that I will commit to do for the election is do haikus for the ballot initiatives, because that really helps you focus. You know what a haiku is? 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables, so little poems. So it helps you describe what it is. Teachers want lunch, so that it boils it right down. So that's a good way to do it, and then you can share that. People laugh because you make them a little funny, but then they know what they're about and they can decide what they think. But it's a challenge. But that might be one idea to bring people up to speed. I saw someone else did it too in the world. It's not an original idea, but it's a good idea because it's crazy how many things are on the ballot. Yes.
There's one that I think Sheila Kuehl is promoting, has to do with water, something to do with water.
Yeah, there's a big water
And
tax.
she spent a lot of, I heard $11 million getting this on the ballot. Did she spend our tax dollars doing that?
They're being sued over that one, I believe. That's the or they're being sued over the parks one. I don't know, but they did spend money to promote. They have to do
And was it
something,
to
and one of
raise
the
more taxes?
well, it's a water infrastructure. I don't know if I can call it a tax or not, but it's like that. It's definitely it's a parcel tax, I believe, and every parcel will have to pay more to contribute to the big infrastructure to make the water smoothly go to the ocean and not clog up and cleaner, better,
Even
which
the
is interesting.
Is that new build
but-
or is that existing?
No, they're gonna do a big Magilla project. They're gonna suck $400 million off of everybody a year to do it for 10 years. It's a big one, and people are wait. We already have money for that, is one side, and the other side was, hey, last time you tried this, you didn't tell us what you were doing. So this time they spent a fortune of public money wiring up everybody, but everybody
Spend
is
our tax dollars for
getting you
this?
ready for this. But this is something we have to do. The federal government's going to make us do it. But there's different ways to do it, and some people,
Couldn't
like
we
me,
use
think
the
it's
$11
smart.
million for the project?
It's a lot more than that.
They
right?
Yeah.
spent that on the advertising.
I know. They do have to do some kind of outreach, as our outreach chair will know. But so there's a line. They want to educate people about what's happening, but they're not supposed to push so that and they always get in trouble for it. And so it's a little understandable, but not really. And but the alternative to building a giant LA River-like thing to do all the thing for the whole thing is everybody locally does a better job and gets a thing and makes a this and that is actually really smart because you want to capture water local, and in a society where everybody was doing a little, you wouldn't have the same kind of problems that they have. So the benefit to them of the bigger way is that, well, all right, let me write up the bill for this year, and they're paying themselves to do the work. So it's a big. They love giant works projects where nobody can keep it in focus. Nobody knows what specifically they're doing, and they get contractors to bid. It's it's a lot of stuff. So the people have to be vigilant, and that's why we continue to persevere. And anything else? Let's see if there's anything else on the agenda. There's one
7.
last thing. Item number 7 is a member of the public in Radau contacted me to alert us to the fact that on October 18th, the Burbank Airport meeting is taking place at the Buena Vista Public Library over
And
on,
that's so not a big enough venue.
I know.
I've been there.
right, they're going to be
And
mobbed.
I can't, the whole reason they said they were delaying the meeting, one of the reasons was they didn't have wherever they were going to hold it originally wasn't big enough. Well, the Burbank Library room, where they've done a lot of the bullet train stuff there, it's just not big enough.
Well, there you have it. And we are going to see, because I think that's the end of the public comment period. And this, to refresh your memory, is the planes flying over the neighborhoods. And, they have to go somewhere because we love Burbank Airport. We don't want to lose that in the shuffle. I would go to Burbank any day over any other airport.
When we first moved in, bought this house in '79, and for the first few years, there were planes going right over our house, and I would call and scream. And they invited me to a meeting. And at that time, the then Congressman, Mr. Berman, sent out a letter that he was threatening Burbank Airport, and I thought, you're an idiot. That airport provides a lot of jobs to this town. You should mind your own business. And I told him that.
Well done.
So at the meeting, whatever happened, they did change the flight path, so the planes were no longer going over us.
Good.
And we were very happy. But now somebody else has complained,
That's the point.
and now they need to have some relief. This is how I see it. They need to have some relief from the noise, so
Yeah.
we're gonna get it again for a few years.
Right.
The good thing is in '79, PSA was still around, I believe, and they
Yeah.
were flying the 3-engine in the rear, in the tail, and they were really loud. The jets
Yeah.
are a lot quieter now, which helps.
Yeah, I learned something today that you might find interesting. A takeaway. The LAPD has 5 helicopters, and the LAFD has 5 helicopters. 10 helicopters. City of LA.
Not many, really.
Not as many as you'd think. And
Yeah.
today, we approved the first process of spending more money to update the GPS. And I was like, really?
In those helicopters?
Yeah, and
We
I was
only
just
have 5?
no, 5 LAPD and
Well, it seems
5
like more,
LAFD.
because one is always over Studio City.
Well, there's also the county sheriff has a dozen helicopters, I think, and there's all the news. There's not as many because you pointed out the consolidation. But
Well, if there's 5 of each, we should have, with 40% of the population, we should have 2 of each in the valley at all times.
exactly.
But we probably don't.
We
No,
do.
but I'm
We
going to
have
make the
one in
argument.
Studio City all the time.
I appreciate your strumming the Valley. Don't forget about the Valley banjo, because that is one of our favorite greatest hits. And that should be the argument to get the mobile pit stop, because it's nice to have 9 functioning in those districts. How about 1
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
metro station? Thank you very much. And they'll have to do it immediately. And plus, I look forward to sending a small bill to Universal for that. And with that, let me just simply say we're adjourned.